My parents sneered, "You'll never be as good as your sister." I stood up and said, "Then tell her to pay all the bills, I'm not sending money anymore." My mom was stunned. "What money? We never received a single dollar from you." Growing up, I always knew I was the disappointment. While my older sister Madison was getting straight A's and winning debate tournaments, I was the one struggling with dyslexia and barely scraping by with C's. While Madison was accepted to Princeton with a full scholarship, I was community college bound. While Madison landed a prestigious job at Goldman Sachs right after graduation, I was working 3 part-time jobs just to afford my tiny studio apartment. My name is Jessica, and for 28 years, I've lived in Madison's shadow. Every family gathering, every phone call, every conversation somehow circled back to Madison's latest achievement. Madison just got promoted to vice president, my mother would gush. Madison bought a penthouse in Manhattan. Madison is dating a surgeon now. And then there was me. Jessica is. Well, she's trying her best. The constant comparisons stung, but I'd learned to live with them. What I hadn't learned to live with was the financial burden that came with being the lesser daughter. It started small when I was 22. Dad had been laid off from his job at the manufacturing plant, and Mom's part-time work at the local library wasn't enough to cover their mortgage. Madison was busy establishing her career and claimed she couldn't help. So naturally, they turned to me. "Honey, could you maybe send us $300 this month?" Mom asked during one of our weekly phone calls. "Just until your father finds something new." $300 was nearly half my monthly income at the time, but I couldn't say no. They were my parents. Family helps family, right? Dad never found another full-time job. The manufacturing industry in our small Ohio town had basically collapsed, and at 55, he was considered too old by most employers. Mom increased her hours at the library, but it still wasn't enough. The 300 became 400, then 500, then whatever I could scrape together. "Madison is so busy with her important work," Mom would explain whenever I asked why my successful sister couldn't contribute. "She's working 80-hour weeks. We don't want to burden her." But burdening me was apparently fine. For 6 years, I sent money home religiously. Sometimes it meant eating ramen noodles for weeks. Sometimes it meant walking to work because I couldn't afford gas. Sometimes it meant declining invitations to go out with friends because I literally had $10 to my name until the next paycheck. During this time, I slowly but steadily built my career. I'd started as a receptionist at a small marketing firm, but I had a knack for social media and digital marketing. I taught myself everything I could, took online courses with money I should have been saving, and gradually worked my way up. By 28, I was a senior digital marketing specialist making decent money, not Madison-level money, but enough to live comfortably if I wasn't supporting 2 other adults. The family dynamics never changed, though. Every time I visited home, it was the same routine. Madison would breeze in for a few hours during holidays, regaling everyone with stories of her glamorous life, while I helped Mom with dishes and listened to Dad complain about his latest rejection letter. "You know, Jessica," Dad said during Christmas last year, "Madison just closed a deal worth $50 million. $50 million. Can you even imagine that kind of responsibility?" I was washing dishes at their kitchen sink, having just arrived from a 12-hour drive, 'cause I couldn't afford to fly. "That's great, Dad. I mean, you're doing fine with your little computer job, but Madison is really making something of herself." My little computer job. The job that had been keeping their electricity on for the past 6 years. The breaking point came in March. I'd been having a particularly rough month, my car had needed major repairs, my apartment's heating system had broken down, and I'd been battling a nasty flu that had kept me out of work for a week. I was already stretched thin when Mom called with another crisis. "Jessica, sweetie, we need a little help this month. The property taxes are due, and we're short about $1,200. $1,200. I stared at my bank account balance and felt sick. I had about $800 in checking and another $2,000 in my emergency fund that I'd been slowly building for 3 years. "Mom, that's a lot of money. Can't you guys figure something else out? Maybe ask Madison?" "Oh, honey, we can't ask Madison. She just bought a new BMW, and you know how expensive those payments must be. Besides, she's so stressed with work." "What about me?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Don't you think I'm stressed too?" "Well, yes, but it's different. Madison has so much more responsibility." I ended up sending the $1,200, draining my emergency fund and putting myself back to living paycheck to paycheck. That's when I started to get suspicious. Madison had been posting on social media constantly, something I'd never paid much attention to before. But that evening, still reeling from emptying my savings account, I found myself scrolling through her Instagram. Photo after photo of expensive restaurants, designer clothes, weekend trips to the Hamptons, and yes, the brand new BMW she'd apparently paid cash for, if her caption was to be believed. A terrible thought crept into my mind. If Madison could afford all this, why had our parents never once asked her for help? I started paying closer attention to these conversations with my parents. The next time they called asking for money, I casually brought up Madison's finances. "Have you guys asked Madison if she could help out? I saw on her Instagram that she just got back from vacation in Italy." "Oh, that was a work trip," Mom said quickly. "And you know how it is, she needs to maintain a certain image for her job. We don't want to put her in an uncomfortable position." But putting me in an uncomfortable position was apparently fine. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. For 6 years, I'd been sacrificing my own financial stability to support my parents while my wealthy sister lived her best life without any family obligations. I'd been the reliable one, the one they could count on, and all I'd gotten in return was constant reminders of how I'd never measure up to Madison. I decided to test a theory. In May, when Mom called with another request, this time for $800 for Dad's medical bills, I told her I'd need a few days to figure out my finances. Instead of sending money, I picked up the phone and called Madison directly. We hadn't spoken one-on-one in months. "Hey, Madison, it's Jessica." "Oh, hi." She sounded surprised. We rarely called each other. "What's up?" "I was wondering if you could help Mom and Dad with some bills this month. Dad has some medical expenses, and they're struggling." There was a pause. "Medical expenses? What kind of medical expenses?" "I don't know the details, but Mom said they need about $800. "Jessica, what are you talking about?" "Dad's fine. I just talked to him yesterday, and he didn't mention any medical issues." "Are you sure you have your facts straight?" My blood ran cold. Mom called me asking for money for Dad's medical bills. "That's weird. Are you sure?" "Because they've never asked me for money. Not once. Dad always talks about how well they're doing financially." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "They've never asked you for money?" "No, never. Dad's always bragging about how they paid off their mortgage early and how much they have in savings. He said they were doing so well that they were thinking about buying a vacation home." I hung up the phone in a daze. Paid off their mortgage early? Thinking about a vacation home? I'd been sending them money for 6 years because they couldn't make their mortgage payments. That weekend, I drove home unannounced for the first time in years. I needed to see for myself what was going on. What I found made everything clear. My parents' house had been completely renovated. New kitchen, new floors, new furniture, a massive flat-screen TV, and yes, there was a brand new Lexus in the driveway next to Dad's truck. The backyard had been landscaped with a new deck and hot tub. I rang the doorbell, my hands shaking with rage. "Jessica." Mom opened the door, looking shocked. "What are you doing here? You didn't call." "Nice car," I said, nodding toward the Lexus. "New?" "Oh, that." Mom had the grace to look embarrassed. "Your father found a great deal." I walked into the house, taking in the expensive renovations. "Everything looks different." "We've been making some improvements," Dad said, emerging from what used to be their basic living room and was now a showcase with leather furniture and an entertainment center that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. "Must have been expensive," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Well, we've been saving for years," Mom said quickly. "You know how frugal we are." I turned to face them both. "Where did the money come from?" "What do you mean?" "I mean the money for all this. The renovations, the car, the furniture. Where did it come from?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We've been very careful with our finances, Jessica. We saved up." "Saved up?" I repeated the word slowly. "While I've been sending you hundreds of dollars every month for 6 years because you couldn't make ends meet." The silence that followed was deafening. "Jessica, we can explain," Mom started. "Explain what?" "Explain how you've been lying to me for years. Explain how you've been taking my money while telling Madison what great financial shape you're in. Explain how you've been using my desperation to help family to fund your lifestyle upgrades." "It's not like that," Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then what is it like?" I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded despite the rage coursing through me. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been scamming me for years while treating me like the family disappointment." Mom's face crumbled. Honey, you don't understand. We never asked Madison because we knew she'd say no. But you've always been so generous, so willing to help. So you took advantage of that? We didn't think of it that way, Dad protested. We raised you, we clothed you, we fed you. We figured you owed us something. I owed you? The words came out as a shout. I owed you so much that you could lie to me for years? Make me sacrifice my own financial security while you bought luxury cars? You're being dramatic, Mom said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Am I? Do you have any idea what the last 6 years have been like for me? Do you know that I've been living paycheck to paycheck because I've been supporting you? Do you know that I haven't taken a real vacation in 4 years? That I've been putting off buying a house, putting off dating seriously, putting off having any kind of life because I thought my parents needed me? Jessica, calm down, Dad said. Don't tell me to calm down. I was shaking now. You've been stealing from me while constantly reminding me that I'm not as good as Madison. Do you understand how sick that is? Mom started crying. We never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. For years. And the worst part is that you made me feel guilty for not being able to give more. I looked around the renovated house one more time. How much? How much of my money went into all this? Jessica, please, Mom sobbed. How much? Dad cleared his throat. Over the years, you've probably sent us about $40,000. $40,000. Money that could have been a down payment on a house. Money that could have been my wedding fund, or graduate school tuition, or a dozen other things that could have actually improved my life. $40,000 that you didn't need. We did need it initially, Mom said weakly. When your father lost his job. But not for the last 4 years. Not since he started getting Social Security and you went full-time at the library. You've been taking my money just because you could. We were going to tell you, Dad said. When? After you bought the vacation home? The look on his face told me I'd guessed correctly. You were going to buy a vacation home with my money. It's not like that, Mom said, but we all knew it was exactly like that. I stood up. I'm done. What do you mean? I mean I'm done. With all of it. With the money, with the guilt trips, with being treated like the lesser daughter while funding your lifestyle. Jessica, you can't mean that, Mom said, reaching for my arm. I pulled away. Watch me. I walked toward the door, then turned back. And the next time you want to compare me to Madison, remember who's been paying your bills for 6 years while she's been showing off on Instagram. I drove home that night with a strange mix of emotions. I was furious, heartbroken, and oddly relieved all at once. For the first time in years, I wouldn't have to budget for my parents' crisis calls. The phone started ringing 2 days later. I didn't answer. They left voicemails, sent texts, even had my aunt call me. But I was done being manipulated. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Madison. Jessica, Mom and Dad are really upset. They said you had some kind of fight and now you're not speaking to them. Did they tell you what the fight was about? Something about money. Look, I know you've been helping them out occasionally, and I appreciate that, but you can't just cut them off. They're our parents. Occasionally? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Madison, I've sent them over $40,000 in the past 6 years. What? That can't be right. It's exactly right. $40,000 while they told you they were doing great financially and told me they were on the verge of losing their house. The silence on the other end stretched for a long time. Madison? I don't understand. They've been lying to both of us. Telling me they were broke while telling you they were fine. Using the money I sent to renovate their house and buy new cars while I lived on ramen and couldn't afford to visit home for Christmas. Jessica, I had no idea. I know you didn't. That's what makes this so sick. They knew exactly how to manipulate both of us. Madison was quiet for another moment. What are you going to do? Nothing. I'm not sending them another penny, and I'm not pretending to be one big happy family. But Jessica, they're still our parents. Are they? Because good parents don't lie to their children for years. Good parents don't take advantage of one child's generosity while protecting another child from any responsibility. I could start sending them money, Madison offered. To make up for it. Don't you dare. The words came out sharper than I intended. This isn't about the money anymore. This is about respect. About honesty. About them seeing me as something other than a piggy bank they could shake whenever they wanted something. So what happens now? Now I focus on my own life for the first time in 6 years. And that's exactly what I did. Within 3 months of cutting off my parents financially, my life changed dramatically. Without the constant drain of supporting them, I was able to save money for the first time in years. I moved into a better apartment, bought reliable transportation, and started dating seriously for the first time since college. I also threw myself into my career with renewed energy. Without the stress of constant financial worry, I was more creative, more focused, and more confident. I landed a major client for my company and earned a promotion and substantial raise. The family pressure was intense at first. My parents called constantly, alternating between apologies, guilt trips, and outright manipulation. They tried having relatives call me. They sent cards and letters. Mom even showed up at my workplace once, causing such a scene that security had to escort her out. The workplace incident was particularly humiliating. I was in the middle of a client presentation when my assistant knocked on the conference room door, looking flustered. "Jessica, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a woman in the lobby claiming to be your mother, and she's refusing to leave." I had to excuse myself from a meeting with potential clients worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to deal with my mother's emotional manipulation. She was in the lobby, crying loudly and telling anyone who would listen that her ungrateful daughter had abandoned the family. Security guards were standing awkwardly nearby, clearly unsure how to handle a sobbing middle-aged woman who technically hadn't broken any laws. "Mom, you need to leave," I said quietly, aware that my coworkers were watching from their desks. "Not until you talk to me," she sobbed. "Not until you come to your senses. This is my workplace. You're embarrassing yourself and me. I don't care. You're destroying our family." The security guard stepped forward then, and I had to watch my mother be escorted from my office building while my colleagues pretended not to stare. I spent the rest of that day fielding concerned questions from coworkers and trying to salvage my professional reputation. That evening, she left 17 voicemails on my phone, each one more desperate than the last. In the final message, her voice was hoarse from crying. "Jessica, please. We made mistakes, but we love you. We're your parents. You can't just throw away 28 years because of money." But it wasn't just about money, and deep down, she knew that. The manipulation tactics evolved over the weeks. First came the guilt trips about family loyalty and forgiveness. Then came the attempts to minimize what they'd done. "It wasn't $40,000, Dad argued in one voicemail. "You're exaggerating. And besides, we spent most of it on things that benefited the whole family." When guilt and minimization didn't work, they moved on to threats. They said they'd tell the extended family that I was heartless and selfish. They threatened to write me out of their will, as if I cared about inheriting anything from people who'd already stolen from me. They even suggested they might sue me for abandoning them, though they couldn't seem to explain what legal grounds they'd have for such a lawsuit. The most disturbing tactic was when they started fabricating new emergencies. Dad supposedly had chest pains and needed expensive tests. Mom claimed she'd been in a car accident and needed money for repairs. They said their furnace had broken down and they were freezing. Each story was designed to trigger my old instincts to help, to make me feel guilty for not rushing to their aid. But I'd learned to verify their claims, and every single emergency turned out to be fiction. Dad's chest pains never resulted in any medical bills or treatments. Mom's car accident wasn't reported to insurance or police. The furnace was working fine when I called a heating company in their area to check. They were still trying to scam me, even after being caught red-handed. The extended family pressure was almost worse than dealing with my parents directly. My Aunt Susan called me in tears, begging me to reconsider. "They're your parents, Jessica. They made mistakes, but they love you. They spent 6 years lying to me and stealing from me," I replied. "That's not love. But family forgives family. That's what we do. Would you forgive a stranger who stole $40,000 from you? That's different." "Is it?" "Because it feels the same to me." My cousin David took a different approach, trying to appeal to my sense of practicality. "Look, Jess, what's done is done. You can't get the money back, so why throw away your relationship with your parents? Because if I don't establish boundaries now, they'll just keep taking advantage of me. They'll see my forgiveness as permission to continue manipulating me." "You're being dramatic. They're not evil people." "I never said they were evil. But they are selfish and manipulative, and I'm done enabling that behavior." The pressure from relatives was relentless for months. Every family gathering I skipped, every holiday I didn't attend, every birthday card I didn't send was seen as evidence of my stubborn pride or unforgiving nature. Nobody seemed interested in understanding why I'd made this choice or acknowledging that my parents had done anything wrong. It was Madison who finally helped me understand the family dynamics that had allowed this situation to develop in the first place. Through it all, Madison surprised me. Instead of pressuring me to reconcile, she started asking more questions about our family dynamics. She began to see patterns she'd never noticed before: how our parents had always treated us differently, how they'd encouraged the competition between us, how they'd used our insecurities against us. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told me during one of our weekly phone calls, which had become a regular thing since the confrontation. "About how they treated us differently." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm starting to remember things that didn't make sense at the time. Like how they'd always praise me in front of you, but they'd call me when you weren't around to complain about things you'd done. This was news to me." "What kind of things?" "Stupid stuff. How you were too sensitive, how you didn't apply yourself in school, how you were wasting your potential with your career choices. They'd make these comments like they were concerned about you, but looking back, I think they were trying to make sure I didn't get too close to you. They were playing us against each other." "Exactly. And it worked. I spent years feeling superior to you, thinking I was the success story and you were the cautionary tale. I never questioned why they came to you for money but not me. I just assumed it was because you were, I don't know, more available or something. More disposable," I corrected. "God, Jessica, I'm so sorry." The more we talked, the more we both realized how our parents had manipulated our relationship for years. They kept us from developing a real sisterly bond by constantly comparing us, by feeding us different narratives about each other, by making sure we never felt like allies. Madison started sharing memories that painted our childhood in a new light. How our parents would praise her achievements while dismissing mine as cute or sweet but not serious. How they'd tell her she was destined for great things while suggesting I should focus on being practical. How they'd encouraged her ambitions while steering me toward safe choices that wouldn't threaten her position as the family star. They groomed us for these roles, she realized. You were supposed to be the caretaker, the one who'd always be available to help them. I was supposed to be the trophy, the one who'd make them look good but never be expected to sacrifice anything. And it worked perfectly, I said. For 6 years, at least. Madison's growing awareness of our family's dysfunction helped validate my decision to cut contact with our parents. She started declining their attempts to use her as a go-between, refusing to carry their messages or plead their case. "They keep asking me to talk sense into you," she told me. "As if the problem is that you're being irrational, not that they systematically abused your trust." "What do you tell them?" "That you're the most rational person I know, and if you've cut them off, they must have done something pretty terrible to deserve it." Having Madison's support made all the difference. For the first time in my life, I had an ally in my own family, someone who understood what I'd been through and why I'd made the choices I had. But the validation came with its own challenges. As Madison and I grew closer, I had to confront my own resentment toward her. It wasn't her fault that our parents had favored her, but I'd spent years feeling inferior to her, years believing that she was inherently more valuable than I was. "I used to hate you sometimes," I admitted during one particularly honest conversation. "I know," she said quietly. "I probably deserved it." "No, you didn't. You were just being yourself. You can't help being smart and successful." But I could have been more aware. I could have questioned why everything came so easily to me while you struggled. I could have noticed that you were sacrificing for them while I lived guilt-free. "We were both victims of their manipulation," I said. "Just in different ways." It took months of honest conversation for us to work through the resentment and competition that had defined our relationship for so long. But gradually, we built something new, a real sisterly bond based on mutual respect and genuine care for each other's well-being. Madison also surprised me by offering to help me financially. "I know you don't want money from them," she said, "but what if I helped you recoup some of what they took? I could afford it, and it seems only fair." "I appreciate that," I told her, "but I need to rebuild on my own. Taking money from you would just be another form of dependence." "But you sacrificed so much. You could have had the life I've had if they hadn't been draining your resources." "Maybe. But I'm not you, and I don't want your life. I want my own life, built on my own terms." Understanding this distinction was important for both of us. Madison had achieved success by following a traditional path that our parents valued: prestigious education, high-paying job, expensive lifestyle. But that path wasn't right for me, and I was finally free to figure out what my own path looked like. Without the financial drain of supporting my parents, I was able to explore opportunities I'd never considered before. I started freelance consulting on the side, building a client base and developing skills that weren't valued at my corporate job. I took weekend workshops and online courses in areas that interested me. I began saving money for the first time in years, not for some family emergency, but for my own goals and dreams. The psychological freedom was even more valuable than the financial freedom. For the first time since college, I wasn't living under the weight of constant guilt and obligation. I could make decisions based on what was best for me, not on what my parents needed or expected. I started therapy during this period, something I'd wanted to do for years but couldn't afford while supporting my parents. My therapist helped me understand the patterns of manipulation I'd endured and develop strategies for maintaining healthy boundaries in the future. You've been trained to believe that your worth comes from what you can do for others, she explained. Breaking that conditioning takes time and practice. She was right. Even months after cutting off my parents, I still felt guilty when I spent money on myself. I still caught myself apologizing for taking up space or expressing my needs. I still struggled with the belief that I was somehow selfish for prioritizing my own well-being. But gradually, with Madison's support and my therapist's guidance, I began to believe that I deserved the same consideration and respect that I'd always given others. I deserved to have my boundaries respected. I deserved to build a life that served my own goals and values, not just the expectations others had placed on me. The work was hard, but it was also liberating. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly free. I think I owe you an apology, she said during a phone call in August, 4 months after my revelation. For what? For being oblivious. For enjoying the pedestal they put me on while you suffered. For not questioning why they never asked me for help. Madison, you didn't know. But I should have. I should have wondered why you always seemed stressed about money. I should have offered to help with their bills. I should have been a better sister. It was the first real conversation we'd had as adults, and it felt like a revelation. The final confrontation came in September, at my cousin's wedding. I'd been dreading it for weeks, knowing my parents would be there and would likely try to corner me. Sure enough, as I was getting a drink at the reception, Mom appeared at my elbow. Jessica, we need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. This has gone on long enough. You're embarrassing the family with this childish behavior. I turned to face her, and I could see Dad approaching from across the room. Perfect. Let's do this publicly. Childish behavior? I said, loud enough that nearby relatives turned to look. You mean like lying to your daughter for 6 years? Lower your voice, Mom hissed. Why? Are you embarrassed? Are you worried people will find out what you did? Dad reached us just as I was getting warmed up. Jessica, that's enough. No, Dad, it's not nearly enough. I was done whispering, done protecting their reputation. You stole from me. For years. While constantly telling me I wasn't good enough, wasn't successful enough, wasn't smart enough to measure up to Madison. We never said that, Mom protested. Really? Because last Christmas you told me I had a little computer job while bragging about Madison's achievements. You've spent my entire life making it clear that I'm the disappointment. More relatives were gathering now, drawn by the raised voices. I could see my aunt, my uncle, several cousins all watching with wide eyes. And then, I continued, my voice carrying across the reception area, you had the audacity to take advantage of my love for you. To lie to me about your financial situation while living off my sacrifice. Jessica, please, Dad said, looking around nervously at the growing audience. Please what? Please continue to let you treat me like garbage while funding your lifestyle? Please keep pretending that what you did was okay? We raised you, Mom said desperately. We sacrificed for you. You sacrificed for me? I laughed, and it echoed in the suddenly quiet reception hall. You mean like how I sacrificed my savings, my financial security, my ability to build my own life because I thought you needed help? That kind of sacrifice? The crowd had grown larger. I could see Madison pushing through the people, her face pale with concern. Or do you mean the sacrifice of constantly belittling me while praising my sister? The sacrifice of making me feel like I owed you something for the basic parenting you were supposed to provide anyway? That's not fair, Dad said. Fair? The word came out as a shout. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've been living paycheck to paycheck for 6 years while you renovated your house? Is it fair that I couldn't afford to fly home for holidays because I was too busy sending you money for bills you could afford to pay yourselves? Madison reached the edge of the crowd just as I was hitting my stride. You know what the really sick part is? I said, looking directly at my parents. You made me feel grateful for the opportunity to help you. You made me feel like supporting you was the one useful thing I could do since I wasn't as successful as Madison. Jessica, Madison said quietly, but I held up my hand. And the whole time, you were telling her what great financial shape you were in. You were protecting her from ever feeling obligated to help while guilting me into emptying my bank account every month. The silence in the room was complete now. Even the band had stopped playing. So here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady and clear. You're not getting another penny from me. Not now, not ever. And if you want to maintain any relationship with me at all, you're going to acknowledge what you did and apologize. Really apologize, not the fake "we're sorry you feel that way" garbage you tried to pull. Jessica, honey, Mom started. And you're going to stop comparing me to Madison. You're going to stop treating me like the family disappointment. You're going to treat me with the same respect you show her, or you're not going to see me at all. Dad's face was red with embarrassment and anger. You can't give us ultimatums, young lady. Watch me. I looked around at all the relatives staring at us. And since everyone's here anyway, you might as well know, for the past 6 years, my parents have been lying to me about their financial situation to get money from me while telling other family members how well they were doing. They've taken over $40,000 from me under false pretenses while constantly reminding me that I'm not as good as my sister. The gasps from the crowd were audible. So if they try to pull the same scam on any of you, at least you'll know what you're dealing with. I turned and walked away, leaving my parents standing in front of 50 relatives who now knew exactly what kind of people they were. Madison caught up with me in the parking lot. Jessica, wait. I turned, expecting her to lecture me about family loyalty or embarrassing our parents. Instead, she hugged me. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. Really? Really? What they did was horrible, and you had every right to call them out on it? I started crying then, all the anger and hurt and relief pouring out of me at once. I'm so tired of being treated like I don't matter, I sobbed. You do matter. You matter so much, and I'm sorry it took me this long to see how badly they were treating you. We stood in that parking lot for a long time, really talking for the first time in years. Madison told me about the pressure she'd felt to be perfect, about how our parents' constant praise had been its own kind of burden. I told her about years of feeling like nothing I did was ever good enough. We should have been allies, she said. Instead of competitors. We can be now. That was 8 months ago. My parents and I have had exactly 3 conversations since Rebecca's wedding. In the first one, they demanded an apology for embarrassing them in front of the entire extended family. In the second, they tried to guilt me by claiming Dad was having heart problems and needed financial help for medical expenses, a claim I immediately verified as false by calling their family doctor, who told me Dad had just had his annual physical and was in excellent health. In the third call, they finally admitted that what they'd done was wrong and asked for forgiveness, but even then, they tried to minimize the scope of their deception, claiming it was only about $30,000 and that some of it really was for emergencies. It was too little, too late. I've built a good life without their drama and manipulation. I bought a house last month, something I never could have done while supporting them. I'm in a serious relationship with a man who treats me like I matter. I got another promotion at work and am considering starting my own consulting business. Most importantly, Madison and I have developed a real relationship. We talk regularly now, not as the golden child and the disappointment, but as sisters who finally understand each other. My parents still try occasionally to re-establish contact, usually around holidays or birthdays. They send cards and gifts that I don't acknowledge. They leave voicemails that I delete without listening to them. Some people think I'm being too harsh, that family forgiveness is important, that I should give them another chance. But I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean letting people walk all over you just because you share DNA with them. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to treat you with basic respect and dignity. I spent 28 years trying to earn my parents' approval and love. I spent 6 of those years literally paying for the privilege of being their daughter while they treated me like a second-class citizen. I'm done with both. These days, when people ask me about my family, I tell them about my sister Madison, how we're building a real relationship based on mutual respect and genuine care for each other. I don't mention my parents unless pressed, and when I do, I simply say we're estranged. The money they took from me is gone, and I'll never get it back. But I got something more valuable in return: self-respect, financial freedom, and the knowledge that I don't have to accept mistreatment just because it comes from family. My parents sneered that I'd never be as good as my sister. They were wrong. I'm not better or worse than Madison, I'm different, with my own strengths and talents and value. And I'm finally free to discover what I can accomplish when I'm not being held back by people who should have been supporting me all along. The best revenge isn't getting even, it's building a life so good that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. And that's exactly what I've done.